Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Boot Nerds podcast. Also the first episode of 2020. JayMike, what's going on?
What's good, my man? Well, to correct you, the first real episode in 2020, because we just talked about the Adi boots the other day, but it's so good to be back. Basically, my fingers have been itching to get back to talk about football boots. But first of all, how have you been, my man?
Good. It's been a busy start to the year, and some interesting plans for 2020. Let's just say that.
Okay. That's, I don't think you're going to reveal anything. I know you, but when you say it's interesting, I'm excited. And 2020, let's just put it like this. It's going to be a really interesting year because obviously there's going to be the Euros, and a big tournament also means big launches. So I'm going to be pretty excited. But today, Josh, we're not going to talk about big launches. We're going to talk about something that, at least to a lot of people, is relatively relevant these days, which will be indoor shoes, which is the best indoor shoe, but also how do you actually choose the right indoor shoe for when you play futsal or indoor football or whatever you might want to go and play. But before we get started talking about indoor shoes, please go and hit that like button if you enjoy the content or have enjoyed the content in the past. And also make sure to go and subscribe to the Boot Nerds podcast by hitting the white bubble somewhere on your screen or, on your phone or wherever you can hit it. Find the subscribe button and click it if you haven't done so already. But Josh, indoor shoes, yeah? What's the deal?
I can't say that indoor boots are my cup of tea. I really like football boots. Give me some cleats to stamp on someone's foot. I'm a fan of that. The playing indoors, and granted, I think that the indoor scene where I live versus where you live in certain parts of Europe is very, very different. In Canada, as an example, indoor is not something that people play because they want to play indoor. It is a necessary evil because it is legitimately frozen solid outside for half of the year. So what you end up doing is your team rents out a gym at some local grade school where they only clean the floor once every 2 years, and you're running around on this super dusty court, and I've never really enjoyed it. I love playing the game, but I've always found that playing indoors is just, I don't know, it frustrates me more than anything. Right, okay. Is that because you can't properly tackle and the hockey player in you is like screaming with frustration? Yeah, you just can't. You can't run. You can't. It's just... I've never really played in an indoor court environment where it's like, this is good. You have to have a proper court set up. And if given that that's the case, I think it can be a lot of fun. Yeah. Especially when you have the boards on the side. And I can imagine, again, for a hockey player like yourself, it's bad because when you see boards and you play in like an enclosed little court, right? You just think, I'm going to smash some people up against the boards. Now, usually that guy would be me getting smashed by someone like you. So thank you for all those wild tackles in the past. Because I know exactly the type of guy you are. But I have a very funny story to tell. Because it just made me think of this. When we were in Japan, we were on this bus going to who knows where the heck we were going. And then you and a couple other Europeans were asking me to explain ice hockey. So I'm explaining the rules to these guys and like what are like common things in ice hockey. And just every single thing I said, your faces were just... I couldn't believe that this was an actual sport. I really enjoyed myself explaining that. That was one of my highlight moments of that trip. We also came to talk about the punching and the fighting in hockey, and it was like, why is this a thing? Like, why is it allowed? I don't really get it. But that was great. Yeah, so I can just imagine whenever you come to an inside court and you see the boards on the side, you just your eyes start to burn, and you just want to go and fuck shit up. Sorry, my French. That's why. But in Scandinavia and in most of Europe, also in the southern parts of Europe where futsal is really big, we actually play a lot of indoors. So I think we have a little bit of a thing for indoor shoes here, and if you're looking for it during the right season, you can actually find a lot of good indoor shoes. So I don't know if you have any like preference or where we should start, but I think we can maybe discuss some of the best out there at the moment. Best options. I think it's. I talked about this with you a little bit before we recorded this, but I think that there's more personal preference in terms of like the amount of variation from one indoor to the next versus a football boot where they're all kind of a flat sole with studs and some kind of an upper, right? So the surface is typically not the variable, but with an indoor, you can choose to have something with very little cushion or a lot more cushion, which is not only going to impact how the boots feel in terms of with every step you make while running, but it also impacts how high you are off the ground. And some people like to be very close. Some people like to be a little bit higher up. For me personally, I'll just kind of lay out what I like from a pair of indoors. I typically prefer something that is going to have a little bit more cushion to it. I really value flexibility is something that I think is important in a pair of indoors because you need the boot to move with your foot nicely in order to maintain, I would say, the best possible traction. And I also, as far as uppers go, my preference doesn't change. I tend to prefer something a little bit more padded, but I'm not against something with a thinner upper. For me, though, the cushion is what's very important because I feel like if I run around in like super thin indoors that have nothing on the bottom, at the end of an hour and a half, my feet are killing me.
Yes. That is also why in Denmark we usually play matches of like 7 or 10 minutes and then we go and chill out because it's very high intensity. But anyway, with what you just said, Josh, I think you're really going to love the Premier II Sala because it has a bit of everything, right? It has a slightly cushioned suede upper. You get some good cushioning in the Lunarlon sole. It's just a very nice all-rounded shoe. And this is, I think, what a lot of people, what you just described, are looking for. Something that is reasonably well-cushioned, reasonably comfortable, has like a good tactile sensation on the ball, but also has a little bit of a slightly more dampened and soft touch compared to, say, a football boot. I don't really know why, but I kind of have the same preference. So something like the Premier II Salas here, or the Adidas Handball Special, or the Mizuno Morelia Indoors, which are here.
Quite good.
Yeah.
Really underrated one. Well, like some of my like a go-to indoor for me has been the Copa Indoor, which used to be the Mundial Goal at one point. Maybe it's the Mundial Goal now. They changed the name a couple different times. It doesn't really matter.
That's just the classic, right?
Right. It's an indoor version of the classic Copa Mundial. Really nice upper, decent amount of cushioning, and actually way better traction than you might expect from such an old school layout. One of my favorite modern indoors, and it's actually back again, is the Nike Lunar Gato 2. I think that that's a really nice, very comfortable boot. I love the feel of the leather. The only downside is that the traction is, unless the court is perfectly clean, prepare to like wipe your feet at every chance you get because it can
be a little bit slippery. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the greatest.
But for me, it's one of the most comfortable shoes you can wear for indoors or when you play on the streets, like you can see I've done with these. But I also have a pair that I actually used over Christmas when I was playing indoors, and I really, really just love them because the cushioning is amazing. And this like really soft touch you get on the ball, there's a really low pointy toe box as well. Very, should we say, elegant and secure. And that's one of the things that I think we should talk about a little bit later, obviously, but for me, when it comes to indoor shoes, lockdown is a very, very high priority, which is also why I like, actually more than I think I would like to admit, I really like the Nike Vapor 13 Pro IC.
Yeah, those are really solid as well.
Which is this one. And the sole might not be the best out there in terms of flexibility when you compare it to some of the other shoes out there, but it just has a nice combination of a really thin mesh upper, a mesh textile. And then it also has a solid amount of like grip on the upper itself. So it has this like silicone coating that reminds you a little bit of the pattern on the Vapor 13 boot. But it just gives a really good, should we say, grippy textured sensation on the ball, and it's super sharp. So if you're into that, that's pretty cool. But also because the heel counter and the way the lacing system really makes the upper tuck in and hug your foot is something I enjoy a lot because it gives amazing lockdown and it really feels like wearing a softer version of the boot indoors, and that's really cool.
I think one of the questions that I get a lot, especially when the indoor season comes around for people that live in places where there's a legit winter where you can't actually play outside anymore, is a lot of people want to know which indoor is going to be the most similar to the football boots that they currently wear, right? Because a lot of people just want the same experience. And there are some instances where they do make pretty much the exact same upper on an indoor bottom, but that's not super common anymore, I would say. And what I often tell these people is I almost think that it's a trial and error type of thing to figure out what you actually like in a pair of indoors, because like what you just described, what you enjoy in a pair of indoors is not necessarily what you enjoy in a pair of football boots, right? They're very different types of footwear in terms of what they're actually doing for you. I think you're actually going to benefit a lot more from an indoor that's better suited for you versus a pair of football boots where, yeah, you might like one better than the next in terms of touch and feel, but ultimately they're all doing the same thing for you in terms of like the experience of running and providing adequate traction or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It really is something you have to try out. I've worn plenty of really thin indoors. And again, my takeaway is that my feet just kind of hurt afterwards. And I'd rather avoid that if I can.
The funny thing is now you said traction and it might sound a bit daft because obviously when you're playing on a football pitch grass with studs, you need good traction. But I'd actually argue that you need even better traction when you play on an indoor court because of the fact that it gets super, super slippery. So when you have a sole like the one on the Lunar Gatos that are slightly more slippery than some of the other gum rubber outsoles out there, it just makes a difference if you're making a lot of those really fast cuts where you just have to put your foot down, you get the traction, you get the grip, and then you have to push off. Because if it's slippery, you're going to fall over. So you also need to find a shoe that makes you feel comfortable in terms of giving you the cushioning that you need without feeling chunky and raising you too much off the ground, but then that will also make you feel secure enough when you put your foot down and you plant it so it's basically stuck on the ground, so you can change direction without slipping and falling over.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you're fair. It's totally fair to say that traction is the number one issue that so many people have when it comes to playing indoors, because the maintenance of the court is very important. You want it to be as clean as possible in order to maintain good traction. So I think what we should do is give a couple of tips to people who are playing indoors, because I see these mistakes all the time. The first thing, and you should never do this, and it drives me nuts when I see people do it, because not only are they hurting their own experience, they're hurting everyone else's. But when you show up to an indoor facility while wearing your indoors, walking through the parking lot and outside and wherever you've worn them, and you just think you're going to wear them on the court now, not only are you bringing a whole bunch of dirt onto the court, but now the bottom of your feet is dirty. And the rubber is compromised. You're just not going to have the grip that boot is supposed to provide. Keep them as clean as possible. Wear them on the court. As soon as you leave the court, take them off. Don't let them touch the ground.
People doing this. People doing this in Canada.
Oh, this is a very common thing. This is so common.
Like me walking, putting on my ice skates, taking off the protection, just walking outside on the parking lot. Like,
it's the same thing. I know it's exactly the same thing, but people do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. Keep the boots in your bag and then put them on when you're on the court. Second thing, if the court is really dusty, yes, it's going to be slippery pretty much no matter what. But if you take your hand and you just wipe the bottom really quickly, your hand's going to get dirty, but it will make a huge difference for like 2 minutes, and you're just going to have to continue to keep wiping them. This is a very common thing that you would know if you've played basketball, but it works on indoor shoes as well. Exactly. I don't have any other tips.
Well, the other tip is for me to use the runner's loop. When you do it, if you're unfamiliar with the runner's loop, it's basically, I can see if I can show it. It's basically where you pull out the laces off the upper lace hole of the shoe right here, and instead of going across, you actually just go up. So you create a little loop on the top two lace holes. And when you've done that, you then take the lace from one side and you put it through the loop on the other side. It's difficult to try and show the camera while you do it, but that's basically what you do. And then you can see here when I pull the laces tight, I actually create a little loop that's really going to tighten the top part of the youth throat around my foot, really locking the front part of the ankle in place, while the heel is really hugging the boot, the foot. Because when you do the runner's loop, it pushes your heel back inside the shoe. So not only does it lock the front part of your ankle down, it also pushes it further back into the heel counter that can lock it down tightly. So it helps out a lot, and also you won't get as many blisters. So keep that in mind and go check out those million tutorials on the runner's loop on YouTube. I think you've done it, Josh. We've done some on Unisport. There are plenty. That's probably my biggest advice. And then another one would be to find a pair of shoes that are made for indoors, and not just go and buy, say you wear the Vapors outside. Then don't necessarily just go and buy the Vapor 13 Academy with an insole on, or indoor sole on. Because that's not necessarily what you want in an indoor shoe. Yes, it might look cooler, but if you go for something like these, I know they're really expensive, the Mizuno Morelias, or the Nike Premier II Salas, which are great for indoor, then you'll get a better indoor shoe that might just not look like the boots you're wearing. But, really try and prioritize performance and being specially made for indoors over just looking like the outdoor model, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And actually, that just reminded me of another common question I get, and that is, can I just wear my running shoes or whatever shoe it may be as an indoor? To just touch on running shoes in particular, you can do it. I mean, no one's preventing you from doing that, but traction's going to be compromised. Stability is going to be compromised. You just mentioned it's very easy to get blisters on an indoor court. In a running shoe that's not designed for side-to-side movements, especially quick side-to-side movements, your foot's going to be sliding around like crazy, and your feet are going to sweat. It's a warmer environment because you're typically indoors anyways. It's a recipe for blisters.
And you're probably also going to break Josh's rule number 1. Don't wear your outdoor shoes on the court.
Yes.
Don't do it. Don't be that guy. Just no.
You've seriously never seen anyone do that there?
No, I mean we actually have indoor court etiquette in Europe. Like, what's
Not
wrong
here.
with you guys, savages?
Not here.
Indoor court savages. I don't know what's going
no
on.
joke. I've seen people show up to practice and it's snowing. The parking lot's full of snow, and they wear their indoors, clogging through the snow, and then they walk in and their shoes are now just soaked, and it's like in all the little grooves. And like for the entire training session, they're just sliding around, basically almost killing themselves because they're not only their shoes dirty, they're wet too. It's like common sense is not as common as it used to be.
Oh, it sounds pretty weird. But to sum it up, to choose the right indoor shoe, I would look for the following 3 things. I would look first and foremost for traction. Gum rubber soles are usually very good, but look for something that has a non-marking sole. Otherwise, whoever owns the indoor court is going to get very mad at you. Go for a non-marking gum rubber sole and you're going to be fine. Look for something with a little bit of cushioning, depending on how much you want, but figure out what you want there and also determine which shoe to buy depending on that. And then finally, look at the upper. Do you want something that's slightly more padded, like a leather or a suede upper, or do you want something that's thinner, say a mesh base with a silicone coating to mimic the feel of a football boot as well? So something to consider, and I think you might just find the right shoe. Or alternatively, go and watch the top 5 indoor shoes on unisportstore.com's Unisport YouTube channel. Shameless plug and all that stuff. So yeah, great stuff.
Great advice.
With that said, though, unless you have any other mind-blowing stories of lack of common sense from Canada, I think it's time to move on.
I thought of something, and I just want to ask: do you guys have the tennis balls? So imagine a football or a soccer ball, full size.
Yeah.
But the outside, the panel is tennis ball material, like the fuzzy yellow.
No.
Do you guys have that?
No.
You've never had that.
I mean, we do, and the kids play with them, but from year 7 and up, you don't. You guys play with oversized tennis ball?
Not anymore. But when I was a kid, it was a very common thing. I'm just asking if that was a thing over there.
You guys seriously need some football culture.
It's bad. Like seriously, that's why when it comes to playing indoor, like the vast majority of people they just don't get it. Like Jay, I can't tell you how many times I've been in like you're practicing in this tiny little gym. It's made for like 6-year-olds to run around in, and guys want to shoot against the wall. And it's just like you're standing in this room and you hope that a ball's not going to come off the wall and just knock out all your teeth. It's seriously, indoor is not the thing to do around here.
Yeah, right. I think basically it sounds like, and I'm really generalizing here, and I'm very, very sorry to anyone offended, but it sounds like you have as much of a clue about indoor football as we have about hockey.
It's, like in terms of general culture, yeah.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's move on to the questions, because we have quite a lot and you guys have been asking some awesome questions as per usual. So there's one here from Louis ERK, or is it FRK? It's ERK. Have you tried using leather shoes stretches in football boots? It feels weird, but finally able to make my Mizunos fit my big toe. Really recommend it, but it definitely stresses the boot. And that's a good point. I don't know, Josh, if you've ever tried it, but I've done it if I've had a particularly like difficult boot, especially back in the days when you really had to break in boots. But I don't feel the need to do it anymore. But yes, if you have an issue, you can do it.
Yeah, it definitely works. Be careful when you're stretching a boot a little bit at a time. But I think I've told this story before, but when I was like 14, 15, 16, and like really focusing on the sport hardcore, I had this bad habit of just jamming my foot in boots that were just too small. Because I hated having any extra space. So I would buy these boots, and if they were like really, really tight, that's kind of how I wanted them. So I never had a need for shoe stretchers. Right. But yeah, I mean, if you don't like that, which you shouldn't if you're normal, shoe stretchers are not a bad solution. But I would say it's still better as long as the boots aren't so uncomfortable where your feet are like going to cramp up or bleed or some horrible injury caused to the boots being too small. Let them break in from you actually wearing them rather than stretching them out while you're not.
I would agree also, because once you've stretched them, there's no way of tightening them up again. So if you've overdone it, there's no going back. So be careful. I think that would be my best advice. So one here from Ricky Hugh. Hey, Jay and Josh, I've never tried leather boots before and just ordered a pair of Tiempo Legend 8 Elite. Then I listened to your old
podcast.
Did I make a bad decision? Because we usually we give it a bit of
No, absolutely not. I know we've been
give it a bit of stick.
Yeah, like openly displeased, unhappy with the Tiempo.
but let's be clear, it's not because the Tiempo Legend 8 Elite is a bad football boot by any means. It's not a bad leather boot either by any means. It's just not necessarily the legend we expected it to be. And it doesn't really carry for us. I think I speak for the both of us here, correct me if I'm wrong. But it doesn't really carry that legend DNA that we would like it to. But looking at it from like a technical and a performance comfort point of view, I think it's a fantastic football boot.
It's good. My issue is not the performance ability of that boot. My issue is that I would rather have like 3 or 4 other leather boots over the current Tiempo, which historically has not been the case. And just for the record, I Googled it. Displeased is a word. I wasn't sure.
Great.
Okay.
But I feel the same way. I would take the regular 3s and I would take the Copa 20 pluses over the Legend 8s. But it's a great boot. No question about that. Maybe even the Puma King Platinums. But I mean, there are other good leather boots out there, but the Legend 8 is definitely very, very solid. So no, you didn't make a bad decision.
And just general advice when it comes to buying a boot that you went on YouTube and watched a bad review of or something like that. If you like them and you're happy with how they feel, you made the right choice.
Such wise words. I can only...
Unless you bought like the Joma Champion Max or something weird. Like,
yeah, you have the right to be very displeased with yourself. Will Stewart, Jay and Jimmy John, as a boot nerd dad, Oh, big up. We got Boot Nerd Dad listeners here. Who has filled a rolling bag full of elite tier youth boots for his kids? Oh, you're one of them dads. Big up, my man. Respect. When or if ever do you think Adidas will follow suit with Nike and start producing all of their top tier boots down to a 4.5 US or 5 UK? Or 37.5 euro sizes. Their junior releases are far lower quality than the adult versions, and even women's are a bit at a disadvantage. Nike has been releasing them for over a year now, but Adidas, well, they haven't. My son's heel shape tends towards Adidas fit over the curved in counter of historical. I think he tried to say the curl heel counter in historical Nike releases. Why do you think Adidas is ignoring the women and youth customers in the size range? That's a good question. That's a lot of questions in one, but it's very interesting. So why, if you don't have a size, well, basically sneaking into the size that I wear, US 7 most of the time, then you can't really get the top tier adult size boots if you wear Adidas. Like, why just not do like Nike and just make everything?
I think ultimately it comes down to money. If they don't think they're going to sell enough of them, then they're not going to make it. And having worked at a soccer store, and granted, retail is very different from like online sales. And honestly, the whole football boot industry has changed a lot from when I was doing it. But a kid's shoes as well as women's boots were still a very common thing at that point in time. Top end kids models, I should say. And honestly, from what I found, because I was a boot nerd at the time and I would always try to sell these really expensive kids shoes to parents that seemed like they really wanted them. But ultimately it always came down to the vast majority of them did not want to pay the high price that would come along with a top end youth boot, right? Because I mean, he knows it. He's going to buy a pair of boots for his kid, and then the next season he's grown out of them, right? So it's a one season type of situation. And then when it comes to women's boots, girls would come in, hey, do you want to try the women's boots? No, I don't want that at all. Give me the men's version, right? So it's just how it works. It's a market that there's just not enough potential in. And I think it takes too much education from the brand's perspective to try and convince a parent to spend $200 on a pair of football boots for their kid that's only going to last them 3 or 4 months.
I think you're onto something there. Of course, money and sales is, I think that determines everything. If there's a market for it, I think they'll make it. I don't think that's the issue. It's probably more the fact that, you know, Nike, they can really live a lot on the hype from the Mercurial range. So I think just by having that in kid sizes, you know, a lot of people will look at the Mercurials and just, you know, come home to Boot Nerd Dad and say, yo, I want a pair of these. But I'm not necessarily sure that the same thing would apply to the Adidas boots, because let's face it, the Mercurial is the Mercurial. It just generates more hype than any other product out there. So I think that would also be a reason that Nike have generated the hype around the high-end top-tier models, that they can actually range those and be really successful and sell enough of those to justify arranging kid-size boots for all their silos. So that's cool. And it's a nice shift that we've seen over the recent years from Nike. But I think maybe it's a matter of time from Adidas, or maybe it's just not going to happen because, as you say, they're very expensive and they're going to cost a lot of money to produce. The more sizes they have to open up in the tooling, so the shape of the outsole, the more sizes they have to open up, the more money they have to earn, because that's quite expensive. So, you know, I'm not necessarily sure it would just make sense to just do it like that for Adidas. I think it's a slightly larger discussion, and maybe they've just figured out that it doesn't make sense at the moment.
Yeah, like these are completely made up numbers, but if they're going to sell 1 million kids boots and they offer a high-end version and a low-end version, they'll probably sell 10,000 of the high-end version and then 990,000 of the low end version.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the numbers would be so far apart from each other that I don't think it makes sense for them to spend the money to develop a youth version, because then scaling becomes an issue. You have to change up the design. You're very right. The Mercurial line is the Mercurial line. There's no other football boot like it. It just has this cult following, if you want to call it that, where there's enough people out there that want to spend the money on it. With every other boot line, though, it's so difficult.
Yeah. I think you have your answer right there. Basically money and demand at the moment. So let's hope it will change for the sake of you and your kids, but I'm not exactly sure it will anytime soon. But let's see. Matthew Burns, I still have a pair of Adidas X17 Plus Pure Speeds, blackout of course, and absolutely love them. Wearing them over the Copa 19 Pluses sometimes since they fit perfectly around my foot. Which previous generations do you guys prefer over the current models? That's a great question.
Oof, lots.
Where do you want to start?
Okay. We'll pick, how about this? We pick one Nike boot, one Adi boot, one Puma boot.
Right.
And we limit ourselves to that.
Okay.
Oh, I don't like this.
Go ahead.
Okay, Nike, I'm going to say Nike Tiempo Legend 5. Because I think that's a boot that I would still wear. I really like it.
I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
I was going to say Laser, but I think that makes more sense. For Adi, oh man, that's tough. I want to say Adi Power. I want to say the Adi Power, I think, is a really solid choice that I would still wear today happily.
Yeah.
And then for Puma, it would definitely be the original Evo Power. I really like those.
Right. For Puma, I would say the Future 18.1. I love that boot to bits. Nike, that is going to be a tough one, but I'd probably say if we can categorize them as previous generation, I would say the Hypervenom Phantom 1 over the Phantom Venom ones. And for Adidas, can I classify X and Adi Zero as the same thing?
Sure.
Right. Then
you
I'm
can
going
pick
to go
any old boot. Doesn't matter.
Then I'm going to go F50 Adi Zero 2014 Zamba over the current X's.
Yeah.
Unless they're the X99.1s because they awesome.
Yeah.
But it's a great question. And I understand why you would sometimes choose the X17 Plus Pure Speeds over the Copa 19 Plus. I personally wouldn't do it myself, but I can understand why he would do it because they're a great pair of boots, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Right. Not much excitement on your end right there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought I'd hoped like for 2020 we would have like a more gassed Josh. Like you'd be in it.
No, it's not me, man. I've never been a jump up and down in excitement person.
No, you really haven't. So that's my goal for 2020. That's my New Year's resolution. Get Josh hella excited. Let's see if I can make it happen. Right, RD7. Hi, Jay. I was just, that applies to both of us, so that's pretty cool. I just wanted to know how did it end that t-shirt battle between you, Jolt, and PVG on the Unisport store website. Greetings from Italy to both you and Josh. Great podcast. I guess I won. I don't think Phil and Jolter sold many t-shirts and I sold some. So I guess I won. But I don't think we made a big deal out of it because we didn't. We couldn't convince you guys.
It doesn't matter. It's as long as we had some and they had none, that's a blowout victory.
So I won. We did it, guys. We did it. Boot Nerds Unite. We did it. So yeah, I don't know if we still have it on the web. Let's not check because it's just depressing. Moving on to the next question from Jonas. And what does it say? Jonas Kuban. Need some help deciding what to buy. Which two should I get of the X19.1, Copa 19.1, and Nemesis 19.1? Are you checking for this shirt?
I am. What should I type in?
JayMike.
Handsome?
Yes. Of course, that brings up the shirt as the first thing. It's actually just type in handsome on Google and it brings you directly to the product page.
Oh no, it's still available, Jay.
Oh Christ, thank you for that.
It's still available.
Happy New Year, Jay.
Every size too.
You're kidding me. Come on.
Yep.
This is the happiest I've seen you today.
Oh man.
Right.
I just love the decision that these shirts were made.
Yeah, let's not talk about
Excellent.
That. Yeah.
Anyways, back to the question. Oh, the JayMike t-shirt.
X 19.1, Copa 19.1, or Nemesis 19.1, and go.
In order from best to worst, X, Nemesis, Copa.
Exactly. So, Victor Gutierrez, and I went away from my... Okay, which boot is better? Flyknit Ultra, which we all know that you love. There was another question, I think, from Daniel Kim, who also wanted to know. Flyknit Ultra or the Vapor 13?
Flyknit Ultra or Vapor 13? For me, like, if it came to me wearing them, Flyknit Ultra. And that's simply down to the slightly less structured upper, which I find to be a little bit more comfortable for my foot type.
Okay.
And I love the added grip that comes along with the Flyknit Ultra.
Right.
With that like weirdly textured ribbed upper, I really like how that feels. Objectively, the Vapor 13 Elite is a better football boot. In fact, I don't think that there has objectively been a better football boot than the Vapor 13 ever. It's that well-rounded.
Yes. You said it very nicely there.
For me, in terms of just what I like, Flyknit Ultra.
I don't know, because I've never tried the Flyknit Ultra in my size, because you never made it in my size Nike. So I am going to have to trust you and say that there's potential in the Flyknit Ultra, but at the end of the day, I think the Vapor 13 does more of what I prefer than what I've felt in my one size too big Flyknit Ultra, so I'm going to have to side with the Vapor 13, but yeah, I'm not surprised either, Josh, that you chose Flyknit Ultra, which is fair because you're a different guy. You're a special guy.
Yeah, so, I like to have a different opinion. Why not?
Yes, we realize. But anyways, guys, with that bombshell, I think it's time to end the first episode and also episode 50, the first episode of 2020. Episode 50 of the Boot Nerds podcast. We're going to end with a bang by telling you that if you want to watch this special guy even more, you can go and subscribe to Josh's channel by clicking the bubble right over there. You can also see what this guy, who apparently can't sell any t-shirts, is up to over at Unisport's channel by subscribing right over here. And finally, see what kind of magic we do together on the Boot Nerds podcast if you click the white bubble in the middle of the screen. Also, of course, don't forget to leave us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. Leave your comments in the comment section right down below alongside your questions for the Q&A pod. And then I guess we'll see you next week in the Boot Nerds podcast. I'm JayMike and I approve this message.
Later.
Buy my t-shirt, please.
Buy my t-shirt.